The galaxy did not explode when the war began. It whispered. On the edge of human-controlled space, the colony world Erebus Prime experienced something strange before anyone understood what was coming. The sky didn't break. The stars didn't fall. Instead, every communication channel across the planet went silent for exactly 17 seconds. 17 seconds of absolute, crushing silence. No radio, no signals, no satellite response. Even the wind sensors stopped reporting data. And then everything came back wrong. Commander Arya Valen of the United Earth Defense Fleet was stationed in orbit aboard the warship UEF Vigilance when the first alarm sounded. At first, it was treated as a systems glitch. But then the second colony went dark. Then the third. All within minutes. "Show me the sensor feed," Arya ordered sharply. The holographic display flickered to life. At first, it looked like normal deep space readings. But then the distortion appeared, like reality itself was bending near the outer rim of the system. Dark shapes moved between stars, not ships exactly. But something far less understandable. Their movement did not follow physics. It followed intent. Dr. Calum, the fleet's Xenotech analyst, whispered, "That's not propulsion. That's translation. They aren't traveling through space. They're rewriting it." Arya felt a cold weight in her chest. "Identify them." The system struggled. Data corrupted. Then finally a classification appeared. Unknown entity type. Previously non-existent in all records. Before anyone could respond, the first strike hit Erebus Prime. But there were no explosions. No fireballs. The planet simply lost a section of its surface. As if reality had been erased with a blade. Entire cities vanished in an instant, leaving behind smooth, glass-like terrain that reflected nothing. Not even light. Silence spread through the fleet. Then the enemy broadcast arrived. A pulse. Not sound. Not light. Something deeper, directly into the minds of every living being in the system. And within that pulse, a single thought formed itself in every language at once. The war has remembered humanity. Arya clenched her fists, because now she understood. This was not first contact. This was return. And humanity had no idea what it had done in the past to deserve it. The United Earth Defense Fleet had faced pirates, rebellions, and even rogue AI uprisings, but nothing in its history prepared it for what happened next. Within 6 hours of the Erebus Prime incident, Admiral Cale Roderick ordered the deployment of the 7th Response Armada. It was one of the most advanced battle fleets ever assembled. 12 destroyers, 4 carriers, and a command dreadnought named UEF Sovereign Dawn. Their mission was simple. Reach Erebus Prime, secure survivors, and identify the unknown threat. But the moment they entered the outer orbital corridor, everything changed. On the bridge of the Sovereign Dawn, Captain Mirasato watched the fleet's formation stabilize in hyperspace transition. The warp tunnel shimmered with controlled energy, a familiar sight for seasoned officers. Then the distortion began. At first, it looked like minor turbulence, ripples in spacetime. But those ripples quickly turned into fractures. The tunnel walls weren't just unstable. They were being rewritten. "Exit vector is shifting," navigation officer shouted. "We're being pulled off course." "That's impossible," Sato snapped. "Stabilize the drive." But before anyone could act, every ship in the 7th Armada froze simultaneously. Not systems failure. Not engine shutdown. Time itself stopped inside the fleet. Captain Sato tried to move, but her body didn't respond. Around her, crew members were locked in place, eyes wide, mouths half open, as if reality had paused mid-sentence. Only the view screen remained active, and on it, something was forming in the darkness. A structure. No, an absence shaped like a structure. It expanded slowly, like a wound opening in space. From within it came shapes that defied geometry, elongated, fragmented silhouettes that seemed to exist in multiple positions at once. Dr. Ishan, frozen mid-breath, managed a single thought. "This isn't an ambush. It's a correction." Then the silence broke. Not sound, but deletion. One by one, ships in the 7th Armada simply stopped existing. No explosions. No debris. Just absence. The destroyer Valiant Edge vanished first. Then the carrier Horizon Spear. Their signatures erased from all sensors as if they had never been built. Panic should have followed, but there was no time for fear. The fleet was being erased faster than thought could form. Inside the Sovereign Dawn, Captain Sato finally regained partial movement. She turned her head toward the only working console. A single transmission flickered across it, repeating the same phrase, "Fragment not recognized. Restoration in progress." Her eyes widened. "We're not being destroyed," she whispered. "We're being corrected out of existence." And then the Sovereign Dawn went dark. The entire 7th Armada disappeared from known space within 43 seconds. No distress signal. No debris field. Nothing left to prove they ever existed. Back on Earth, Command Headquarters received one final fragmented report before all contact failed. The war does not kill. It unwrites. And in the silence that followed, humanity realized something terrifying. They were no longer fighting an enemy. They were fighting something that considered reality itself negotiable. Earth had always believed space was vast, dangerous, but ultimately understandable. Every war in history had followed rules, logistics, physics, cause and effect. Even the stars seemed to obey logic. But logic was dying. After the disappearance of the 7th Armada, Earth Defense Command activated Protocol Black Horizon, the highest emergency level ever conceived. Every remaining fleet was recalled. Every colony was placed on silent lockdown. Civilian transmissions were restricted to emergency channels only. And still, the signal came through. It originated from Deep Orbit Relay Station Echo 9, a remote listening post positioned beyond Neptune's former boundary. It was supposed to be inactive, abandoned, dead. But at 3:17 Universal Time, it transmitted a single encrypted burst. Admiral Cale Roderick stood in the command chamber as the decoded message began to unfold on the central display. The room was silent except for the soft hum of failing confidence. Technician reports came in one after another. Signal is not artificial encryption. It's structured entropy. Translation is causing instability in secondary systems. Recommend immediate shutdown of decoding process. But Roderick didn't move. Continue. The screen flickered. At first, it showed corrupted fragments. Images of broken fleets, shattered stars, and unfamiliar geometries bleeding into each other like dreams dissolving under pressure. Then the message stabilized. A voice emerged. Not audio, not digital. A presence that forced itself into comprehension. "You remembered wrong." The words echoed inside every mind in the room. A junior officer dropped to his knees, clutching his head. "It's inside the cognition layer, sir. It's bypassing neural filters." Roderick staggered slightly but held his ground. "Identify source." The system struggled, then answered. "Source, PR Irreality War Entity // designation unknown." Before anyone could respond, the transmission continued. "You built your stars on our shadows. You called it space. We call it the Wound." Suddenly, all holographic maps across Earth Defense Command updated themselves, without authorization. Entire sectors of known space were overwritten. Systems that had existed for centuries were now labeled as temporary formations. Star routes were erased and replaced with impossible geometries that made navigation systems fail instantly. One analyst whispered, "It's rewriting our map of existence." Then the final part of the message arrived. A visual fragment, a memory that did not belong to humanity. It showed a galaxy burning not with fire but with collapsing reality. Civilizations falling not through war, but through revision. Entire empires being edited out of existence like lines in a failed equation. And at the center of it all, something watching, something remembering. The transmission ended abruptly. Echo 9 went dark forever. No signal remained. No trace of origin. Only one residual phrase lingered in every system log across Earth. "The Galactic War has already begun before you were born." Admiral Roderick finally spoke, voice heavy. "If that's true, then we are not soldiers. He looked at the shattered star map. We are leftovers. Earth's governments had a habit of hiding things they didn't understand. But what they hid this time was older than governments. Deep beneath the Himalayan mountain range, sealed inside a facility known only as Site Zero, lay an object that had never been activated in recorded history. It was not built by modern science, not even by any known ancient civilization. It was simply labeled Project Aegis Null. When the galactic war signals began corrupting global defense systems, Site Zero responded automatically, something no one expected. After 11,000 years of silence, the core chamber finally unlocked. Inside stood a structure shaped like armor, but not for any human body. It was too large, too complex, too alive. Commander Arya Valen arrived at Site Zero aboard a stealth transport after escaping Erebus Prime's destruction. She had been briefed only with one sentence. If reality breaks, wake the armor. Now she stood before it. The chamber was dim, lit only by thin strips of blue energy running along the walls. The armor floated in the center, suspended in a field that bent light around it like gravity had forgotten its rules. Dr. Calum, now transferred from Fleet Command, stepped forward carefully. It's not mechanical, he whispered. It's conditional. Arya frowned. Meaning, it doesn't function. It responds to something deeper than command codes. As she approached, the armor reacted. A pulse traveled through the chamber. The air tightened. The lights dimmed as if reality itself was holding its breath. A voice echoed, not from speakers, but from within perception itself. Signature match detected. Arya froze. Signature? She said quietly. Dr. Calum's eyes widened. That's not possible. It's reading biological memory imprinting. It's reacting to your presence like you've been here before. The armor began to unfold, not opening like metal plates, but unfolding like a memory remembering itself. Sections separated, rotating in impossible angles, revealing glowing inner cores that pulsed like a heartbeat. The structure was not built. It was assembled from forgotten physics. Then the chamber trembled. A projection appeared above the armor. A battlefield. Not Earth. Not human space. A galaxy engulfed in layered war. Civilizations clashing across dimensions. Fleets dissolving into mathematical errors. Entire star systems collapsing into silence. And in the center, a figure wearing the same armor. Arya's breath caught. That's me? Dr. Calum stepped back. No, that's impossible. That recording is older than human civilization. The armor responded again. You were never only human. The room went silent. The truth settled like gravity. Earth hadn't built Aegis Null. It had inherited it. And whatever had worn it before had not survived the war that erased entire realities. The armor fully awakened. Energy surged through the chamber, and for the first time, Arya felt something impossible. Not power. Not control, but recognition, as if the universe itself had just remembered her existence. Outside the facility, alarms began to scream. Something had arrived in orbit, and it was not alone. The sky over Earth did not darken. It unraveled. Orbital defense networks detected the anomaly first, then immediately failed to describe it. Every sensor that pointed toward low Earth orbit returned different results. Some showed empty space. Some showed burning fleets. Some showed nothing at all, as if observation itself had fractured. Then the enemy arrived, or rather, became noticeable. Arya Valen stood inside Site Zero as alarms screamed through the facility. The awakened armor, Aegis Null, reacted instantly, its energy field expanding through the chamber like a breathing organism. Dr. Calum was staring at the tactical feed, face pale. We're not seeing a ship, he whispered. We're seeing a state change in reality. Arya stepped forward. Explain. He struggled to form words. It's not entering orbit. Orbit is adapting around it. Space is reshaping to accommodate its presence. Above Earth, the first visible distortion appeared. A circular tear in the sky, perfectly smooth, like a hole cut into existence itself. Inside it, something moved, but not in the way matter should move. It shifted like a thought being rewritten mid-sentence. Then came the ships. Not metal. Not technology. Structures made of layered probability. Their edges flickered between existence and non-existence. Every second they existed, they risked becoming something else entirely. One of Earth's orbital defense satellites attempted to lock onto them. It instantly dissolved into numerical error. On the surface, entire communication grids began to fail. Cities lost synchronization with global systems. Timekeeping devices drifted out of alignment by seconds, then minutes, then hours. And still, the enemy did not attack. It observed. Then the transmission began. Not audio, not electromagnetic. A universal intrusion into cognition. Every human on Earth and in orbit heard the same presence speak. This reality is unsupported. Arya clenched her fists inside the armor interface. Unsupported by what? Dr. Calum answered softly, almost terrified of his own conclusion. By its original version. The enemy fleet began to descend, but it did not move downward. Instead, Earth's atmosphere began to redefine its boundaries to allow them through. Clouds rearranged. Pressure systems shifted. Even gravity subtly bent its rules. Arya watched in disbelief as one of the entities passed through a satellite, without collision. The satellite simply stopped having permission to exist in that coordinate. Physics is failing, she said. No, Calum corrected. Physics is being edited. Then the enemy finally acted. A pulse spread across the planet, not energy, but revision pressure. Regions of reality began to destabilize. Entire coastlines flickered between existence and absence. Buildings shifted location without moving. And then the first city vanished. Not destroyed, not bombed, just removed from the current version of reality. Arya activated Aegis Null. The armor responded instantly, locking onto her neural pattern. A new voice emerged. Not the enemies, but the armor itself. War state. PR irreality contact confirmed. Outside, the enemy presence intensified. Something massive was arriving behind them, something that made even these entities seem small. Arya looked up at the collapsing sky. This isn't invasion, she said quietly. It's correction. And for the first time, Earth understood the true horror. They were not being attacked by an enemy. They were being audited by something that decided whether existence itself was allowed to continue. When Earth's orbital systems began to fail, most governments expected evacuation protocols to be the final step. They were wrong. There was one thing humanity had never fully admitted to itself. Deep beneath the oceans, hidden behind lunar caverns, and buried inside forgotten asteroid stations, there were fleets that were never officially active. They were not built for peace. They were not built for defense. They were built for endings. Admiral Cale Roderick stood inside the buried command ark known as Noah Bastion, located beneath the Atlantic seabed. The structure had not been opened in over a century. Its systems had been dormant, waiting for a signal that was never supposed to come. Now that signal was active. The walls around him hummed as ancient reactors awakened. Massive hangar doors, kilometers wide, began to open, releasing pressurized oceans that had sealed them for decades. Outside, the pressure of the deep sea shimmered against containment fields as structures rose from the abyss. Roderick watched holographic readouts flicker alive. Fleet designations appeared one by one. First Exile Armada online. Shadow Protocol Carrier Group online. Chrono Defense Dreadnoughts online. And finally, Project Last Dawn active. A young officer beside him whispered, "Sir, we didn't even know half of these existed." Roderick didn't look away from the screen. "That's because we weren't supposed to use them." Above Earth, reality continued to break apart under the influence of the unknown entities. Entire continents flickered in and out of coherence. The sky was no longer stable, just layers of shifting probability. And yet, beneath the ocean, something was waking. Massive vessels rose from underwater docks. Ships that bent light around them. Ships that existed slightly out of phase with time itself. weapon systems that had never been tested because testing them would have meant risking reality. One of the ships, UEF Nemesis Protocol, emerged first. Its hull was marked with symbols no modern language could translate, but which instinctively meant one thing: final measure. Roderick received the emergency feed from Orbital Command, or what remained of it. Arya Valen's voice came through static. They are rewriting Earth's existence layer by layer. Conventional defense is meaningless. Roderick tightened his jaw. Then we stop using conventional defense. He turned to his fleet commanders. This is not a war anymore, he said. This is a refusal. The fleet engines ignited. The ocean above them boiled silently as massive warships ascended through kilometers of water, breaking into open air like ghosts becoming solid. In orbit, the enemy paused. For the first time, it noticed resistance. The human fleet assembled in low Earth orbit, smaller than the alien presence, but anchored in something different: continuity of identity. Roderick's flagship stabilized formation. All ships aligned. Then the fleet broadcast its first unified signal across all channels. We are still here. The enemy responded immediately, not with weapons, with revision pressure escalation. Space around the fleet began to distort violently. Hulls of human ships flickered as if they were about to be edited out of existence. Aria's armor activated on Earth in sync with the fleet. Aegis Null responded. Last human fleet detected. Anchoring reality coherence. And for the first time in the war, reality pushed back. The moment humanity resisted, the universe responded like a wounded organism. In low Earth orbit, the clash did not look like a battle. It looked like two versions of reality trying to overwrite each other at the same coordinates. The last human fleet held formation: UEF Nemesis Protocol, Shadow Armada, and the impossible relic ships of Project Last Dawn. All synchronized through Admiral Cale Roderick's command grid. Their shields were not just energy fields anymore. They were statistical anchors, forcing existence to remember that these ships were real. But the enemy had escalated beyond fleets. A shape began forming behind them. At first, it was mistaken for a gravitational lens. Then for a collapsing star. Then for a dimensional tear too large to measure. Finally, the sensors stabilized enough to classify it. Entity designation: God Engine, unstable. On Earth, Arya Valen stood within the awakened Aegis Null, watching orbital data flood her neural interface. Her voice was steady, but the armor responded to the rising instability in her thoughts. Dr. Kalem's voice broke through comms. Arya, that thing isn't a ship. It's a mechanism. A mechanism for what? She asked. There was a long silence before he answered. For deciding what gets to exist. In orbit, the God Engine unfolded further. It was not constructed, it was assembled from laws of physics that did not belong to this universe. Each segment looked like a contradiction made solid. Parts of it existed in multiple states simultaneously. Past, present, and something that had not yet happened. The human fleet fired first. Not missiles. Not plasma. But continuity lances, weapons designed to reinforce reality itself. Beams of stabilized causality struck the enemy presence, attempting to force it into a single definable state. For a moment, it worked. The God Engine flickered. Then it corrected itself. And reality around the strike point was rewritten so the attack had never occurred. Roderick's voice came through all channels, calm but heavy. It's not defending itself, he said. It's rejecting the idea that it can be harmed. Arya clenched her fists inside Aegis Null. Then we stop attacking it as an object, she said. We attack the system it runs on. Kalem hesitated. You mean, the rules? Arya looked up at the collapsing sky. Yes, the rules. Aegis Null responded instantly. Warning. Targeting fundamental structure of reality may result in localized existence failure. She didn't hesitate. Do it. In orbit, the fleet reconfigured. Every remaining ship synchronized into a single formation. The Last Dawn Array. Then humanity did something that had never been attempted in recorded history. They fired not at the enemy, but at the definition of the battlefield itself. The blast was not light or energy or matter. It was a forced contradiction inserted into reality. For the first time, the God engine did something unexpected. Paused. Not damaged. Not destroyed. Confused. And in that moment of instability, Arya whispered, "Now." For the first time since the war began, the universe hesitated. The God engine hung in orbit like a question that had lost its answer. Reality around it flickered, sometimes stable, sometimes broken, sometimes something in between. The last dawn array maintained its impossible firing state, not destroying the enemy, but continuously forcing contradiction into its existence layer. On Earth, Aegis Null pulsed with escalating energy. Arya Valens stood at the center of it, no longer feeling like a soldier, but like a bridge between forgotten timelines. The armor was fully awake now, its systems no longer responding to commands but to recognition. Dr. Kalem's voice was faint through the distortion. "Arya, the enemy isn't just attacking us. It's trying to restore an older version of reality where we don't exist." She stared upward. "And why do we exist here then?" A long silence. Then Aegis Null answered instead. "Because you survived the first version's deletion." In orbit, Admiral Kale Roderick watched the God engine begin to fracture at its edges. Not breaking, remembering incorrectly. The system that governed it was no longer stable. Too many contradictory realities were overlapping. The enemy finally transmitted again. But this time, it sounded different. Not command. Not certainty. But something almost like pain. "You were not supposed to resist this cycle." Arya tightened her grip. "Then rewrite your cycle," she whispered back. The last dawn array surged one final time. A beam of collapsed probability struck the God engine's core, not as destruction, but as absolute inconsistency. It was a weapon designed to make something impossible to define. And for a brief moment, the God engine stopped existing in every version of reality simultaneously. Silence fell across orbit. Then, slowly, the structure began to dissolve. Not into debris, but into questions that had no answers anymore. One by one, enemy presences vanished. Not killed, not defeated, but rendered unanchored from reality. On Earth, the sky stabilized for the first time in days. Oceans stopped flickering between states. Cities resolidified. Gravity returned to consistency. But victory did not feel like victory. Admiral Roderick's voice came through the fading channels. "We didn't win," he said quietly. "We just survived long enough for it to stop correcting us." Arya looked at Aegis Null. The armor's light was dimming now. "Threat cycle interrupted," it said. "But memory remains." Kalem frowned. "Memory of what?" Arya didn't answer immediately, because deep in her mind, she could still feel it. The war was not gone. It had simply retreated into somewhere deeper than space. Somewhere deeper than time. Somewhere that remembered everything. And one day, it might decide to return. Final message. Humanity thought space was empty, but space was only waiting. And the galactic war was never truly a beginning. It was a continuation of something the universe refused to forget.